Hey, awesome entrepreneur. This is episode number 399 of the Heart-Centered Business Podcast. And if you feel like maybe my voice sounds a little different right now, it's because I am currently sitting on the carpet on the floor of my office, just chilling out. And this format of podcast episode is something that I'm going to just kind of smatter about throughout the podcast as we move forward. I still haven't quite come up with a name for it. I was like, do I call it Podcarpet? Because I'm literally podcasting from the carpet. But these are more informal podcast episodes where I just want to share like an insight or a thought or even start a conversation where maybe the concept isn't completely figured out, or maybe it brings up more questions than it answers. But I do find that from time to time, especially with Facebook Lives that I do, we end up having some really, really amazing conversations. But I know that not everyone loves consuming content that way. And my lives generally don't get the same level of viewership as downloads of the podcast. So I thought we'll take some of these conversations a little further afield, start some convos, and just have a little carpet time together. So I hope that you find this helpful. As I said, this is episode number 399. So if there are any links, we'll pop them in the show notes at tashcorbin.com/399. But considering I haven't actually got a structured podcast to share with you today, who knows? Let's see. I'm Tash Corbin, and this is the Heart-Centered Business Podcast. Okay, so the whole premise behind doing these podcarpets is to have more of an exploratory conversation about a particular topic or a question that's come up. And the first one that I thought I would do is actually just a little moment of gratitude. So I recently did a webinar where I was talking about when I first started my business, and I was talking about how grateful I am that I didn't have a lot of money when I first started my business, because I actually do believe that if I had had $15,000 to start my business or $20,000 to start my business, not only would I have spent that money on things that wouldn't have actually moved me forward, I actually think it would have slowed down my progress in starting my business. And the reason why I say that is because when I first started my business, I needed to get into the making sales and making money part really quickly, because we had actually agreed that I would quit my job and start my business. My partner and I had a big conversation well before I started the business. And at that point in time, I out-earned him 3 or 4 to 1. Like, I was really the major income earner in our relationship. And so it was a huge lifestyle change to go from both of our salaries down to just his. And not only that, before I started my business, we actually went on holidays to Europe, to the Monaco Formula One and Cannes Film Festival and Paris Disneyland and all sorts of cool things. And so we even maxed out our credit card while we were away on holidays. So when I came back to start my business, I didn't have money to spend on a website, on getting branding done. I didn't have a lot of money to do like a bunch of different photo shoots or even buy like into a big mastermind or buy fancy online courses or mentorship or that kind of thing. One thing I did spend money on was before we went on our holidays, I booked a VIP 1-day package with a business coach. But unfortunately, that was a total write-off. Like, in that session, I definitely got some ideas around what I would do with my business, but it didn't actually help me to have a plan or strategy to get clients. It didn't have there was no information in that day in which I could actually make money with the information I gained. And instead, I just did a lot of theorizing around who I might help and how I might help them. And so very early in my business, I needed to figure it out. And I decided that my first focal point would be, I just want to help as many people as possible. And I want to get some client testimonials and client results and client conversations under my belt. And I will do whatever it takes to have as many one-on-one conversations with as many people who might be my ideal client as possible, so that I can get some idea of what I need to focus on with my messaging, what I am even doing on social media. Like, I had no idea how to grow a business on social media at all. Like, I mean, looking back on it, I just think, man, I was naive. I don't know what I was thinking. I really wasn't thinking. And so I'm really grateful that, number one, I had the gumption to even just give it a go. But I am actually very grateful that I didn't have a huge budget when I started my business. Because at that point in time, I thought I was going to start a career coaching business for women in corporate roles. And I had conversations with 3 people about career coaching, and I did some market research interviews with people who fit my niche points and what I thought I was going to be doing. And after those 3 conversations, all 3 of them, I just wanted to help them start their own business. And at the time, I was like, oh my gosh, like, I've made such a mistake. I don't want to do this. I left the corporate world for a reason. I don't want to coach people in how to survive and thrive in the corporate world. Like, I left it because I couldn't tolerate it anymore. And if I had had money to start my business, by that stage, it would have been too late. I would have had a website about career coaching. I would have had all of my social media and fancy photos and a logo created. I probably would have named my business something to do with, careers, her career or something like that. And it would have been completely going in the wrong direction. And then I think, well, if I had spent all that money on building a website and building a brand and putting all of those pieces of assets together, when I'd had those conversations with those first 3 people and found I really hated talking about thriving in a corporate environment, I would have been very hesitant to let it go. If you think about that concept of sunk costs, like how much money have you spent so far? How much time have you spent so far? How much energy have you spent on this thing so far? The bigger the sunk cost, the less likely you are to pivot quickly when you realize something isn't aligned. And so I am just so grateful that pre-business Tash was terrible at saving and didn't really think through the expenses of having a business and was so naive about how quickly she would get paying clients, because it meant that I had a lot of flexibility in those early stages. And it meant that I got the opportunity to play and experiment with what I did want to do, and where I could see some real value in my services being offered to people who could use them. And so the fact that I wanted to help all 3 of those people start a business said to me, well, maybe I should help other people start a business. Now, I also want to just be really clear. I had just started my business, and here I was thinking, I think I want to help other people start a business. Like, I had 15 days experience in what it takes to start a business. And I tell you, I hadn't had many paying clients by that point. I think I had 2 paying clients in my first 2 weeks. One of them was a friend of a friend, and one of them was my choir teacher. And I am just so grateful that I took a leap of faith in myself, and that I spent a lot of time and energy in those early weeks of my business paying attention to what I liked and what I didn't like, what I wanted to do and what I didn't want to do. I'm so grateful that I had this huge focus on other people. Everything I did in those first few weeks of creating my business was about, what do other people want? What do other people need? Where do my skills serve other people? I wasn't focused on myself. I wasn't focused on, what do I look like on social media? What do I share on social media? What does my website look like? What do I say about myself? What are my business cards going to say? I didn't want to make any final decisions about that until I was really clear on who I was serving and what they needed and would they pay for that and would I be able to deliver? And I was so focused on what my potential clients might need from me and wanted to learn and wanted to hear from me. And I had so little money to spend in the business that I didn't want to commit a job title to a business card only to change my mind a few weeks later. So I just didn't get business cards made. I didn't want to commit to a business name because what if I decided I wanted to change what I was doing in my business? So I just called my business Tash Corbin. What a great decision. I'm so grateful to pass Tash. But I also have to be honest with you, a lot of those things were actually just by default, not by design. And so when I say I'm so grateful that I did not have a lot of money to start my business, that really is true because I know I would have wasted the money. I know I would have gone off in a random direction and spent a lot of money going in that direction. And then it would have been much harder for me to pivot and change my mind. I would have spent a lot of money on things that made it look like I had a successful business, but actually didn't create any momentum or growth or proof of concept for my business. I probably would have been suckered into one of those write a book in 30 days and pay $10,000 to be a best-selling author kind of things. And I would have put all of this time and energy into writing a book that had nothing to do with my business in the end. The more money I would have had, the more money I would have wasted. And the other great thing that came out of me not having money was the fact that I had to become really clear on what lean business was about. And when I was working in corporate consulting, the lean business methodology was something that I'd sort of touched on here and there with some of our small business clients, but I really didn't have an in-depth understanding of how a solo business like mine could apply that lean business methodology. So in the corporate work that I had done and also in the lean business training I had done as a corporate consultant, it was all focused on product-based businesses. So it was talking about things like only having a small product run in the first instance and running that first product run at a loss as a way of testing the market and testing viability of a product without spending a lot of money up front. It was talking about pre-sales of products before you even get the final product made, just getting a couple of samples made for photography and then go and take a bunch of pre-orders and give them an 8-week delivery period. And then if everything goes pear-shaped and you don't get enough orders, you can just cancel it and give everyone a refund and then, go back to the drawing board. So applying the methodologies and principles of lean business to a service-based business was a little different because really in their purest form, service businesses are quite lean. They can be very lean. And so a lot of my understanding of lean business was just that my business is lean because the things that I'm delivering, i.e. my services, I'm creating them as I go with my clients. And so, I'm not investing a lot of time in product perfection or high runs of products because I'm not getting anything created in advance. But actually, upon reflection, probably about 6 or 7 months into my business, I realized that the lean business model for a service-based business isn't just about the money that goes into producing your products and services. It's about the money that goes into growing the business as well. And that's where my lean business methodologies really started to take their own shape. And I was developing something that was quite unique in terms of its intellectual property because people starting online businesses, selling services or coaching or mentoring, that kind of thing, they they weren't included in a lot of the common articles and examples that were used to talk about lean business methodologies. And also, it wasn't taking into consideration anything beyond product development. And so what I saw, because I had some people that I did some courses with in the later part of 2013, which was my first year of starting my business, I saw that I was in a social media course. It was a terrible social media course, but I was in a social media course with 7 other people, and 3 of them had started their online service business, a coaching business, with over $100,000 in the bank. They had been working in corporate roles, they had an inheritance, they had made money in property, and so they'd been saving in order to be able to start a business one day. And now they were starting an online business with 6 figures in savings in the bank to cover their living expenses, but also the startup costs of starting a business. And I realized, looking at their experience, that I was just so lucky that I didn't do that, because I would have actually been worse off in terms of the progress I'd made in my business. So those people had all started their business around the same time as me, or maybe a few months before I started my business. And yet, out of all of us in that program, I had had the most clients when we started working in that program together. And the reason I had the most clients was because I didn't spend the first 6 months of my business creating assets. I didn't spend the first 6 months of my business building a giant website. One of the people, a beautiful girl called Lauren, who now doesn't even have her own business. She now works in a job again. She had saved $180,000 to start her business, and she had spent $35,000 on bespoke branding and a custom website. And I mean, this wasn't in the days of Squarespace and, really beautiful, simple websites. This was custom coding and custom fonts and all sorts of fancy bells and whistles. And she had spent $35,000 on a website. And when I went to her website, I still didn't know what she did. And it was such an eye-opener for me to see, actually, you know what? Doing it lean, it wasn't just oh, well, lucky I was able to figure it out. It was oh, well, lucky I didn't have any money, because I actually think it allowed me to just focus on my audience, focus on building an understanding of my ideal clients, focus on showing up and having as many one-on-one conversations as I could with as many people who wanted to start a business or had just started a business as possible, to understand what they needed, what was in their way, what they were getting fixated on, what they were getting stuck on, and how I could actually help them to move forward and make progress and get some income in the door and start to prove their business was a viable one. And so I thought I would share this podcast episode and share this conversation with you, because I think in a lot of cases we can sometimes have that sense of FOMO, or that sense of, oh, it's so much harder for me because, but there really are a lot of benefits sometimes in that scarcity. For me, the scarcity of money to invest in the business meant I invested my time and I focused on what was actually really important. And I focused on making money as quickly as possible, because I'd set a goal for myself that I wanted to pay a week's rent within the first 3 months of starting my business. And I was able to do that in my 3rd month, which felt really cool. But I really just wanted to focus on validating my business and getting money in the door as quickly as I could and getting as many clients as I could. And so it just made me stop asking the question, will this succeed or won't it? Or, have I got the right business name or not? Or should I get business cards or not? Half those questions were answered by the fact that I didn't have any money. So I can't get them, so fine. I'll just have to focus on getting clients instead. And instead of asking will I or won't I, will it or won't it, I just started to ask the question, okay, how do I do this? How do I get as many one-on-one clients conversations as possible? How do I understand what people would pay for today? How do I package up my services in a way that people think it's a real no-brainer decision to jump in and get that level of business mentoring from the very outset? How do I ensure that I have the skills and education that I need to be able to be of the most service for my clients? Now, I'm not underestimating my existing skills and education. I had a degree in business. I had worked in corporate consulting for a long time. I had a business planning background. I had an executive coaching background. Like, I knew the ins and outs of business. I knew the ins and outs of marketing and buyer psychology and all sorts of things. But the thing that I had missing was, but how do you do it online? How do you do it with social media? And so I had to learn that very quickly, and I had to learn it with no money. And so I had to learn it kind of in that just-in-time methodology, in that if someone who was a client or someone who was following me on Facebook asked a question about how to do XYZ in MailChimp for their mailing list, I had to go and find a YouTube video that would walk me through it so I could give them the instructions. And so I literally was a leading learner when it came to a lot of the social media elements and the online components of growing a business. But I think the thing that really helped me to stand out from other people teaching marketing and sales and how to start a business in those early days, well, there's a few things. Number one, even then, no one wanted to work with people starting out. Everyone wanted to work with successful business owners. Everyone wanted to work with business owners who were scaling up. Startups were kind of just left on their own. And in the first few months of my business, I focused on working with artists and creatives as well. And so even where there might have been a marketing or business strategist who would work with startup business coaches or startup life coaches, nobody was working with artists because, you know, the perception of starving artist syndrome, and creatives have the worst money mindset and all those sorts of things. And so people made assumptions that artists and creatives wouldn't spend money on business coaching and business mentoring. So that definitely helped me stand out from the crowd. But I think also another thing that really helped me stand out from the crowd was I had such a depth of understanding of marketing and buyer psychology and messaging and, how to write compelling content that help people to move forward towards a buying decision, and what it was that people wanted to see or hear from someone they were considering hiring as a business coach, because I'd worked in consulting and pitched as a business coach to executives and CEOs and owners of small businesses for years. And so I had a lot of that behind me. So that really helped me to stand apart from the crowd, because I wasn't just spewing the same old advice on the internet. I couldn't tell people in any kind of confident way, yeah, if you post a blog a day every day for the next year, you're going to get paying clients, because that's not how I got my clients. And that's not something that I did consistently when I first started my business. But I did know that if you used the opportunities available to you to connect with potential clients one-on-one and get to know what they needed and, deeply understand where they were getting stuck and what their goals were, that would give you an opportunity to check in and see if they wanted to know about how you could help them achieve that goal or overcome that obstacle. And, a good 50% of people that you ask, do you want me to tell you how I could help you fix it, will say, yeah, sure, tell me. And so that high connection, high conversion model of marketing was the model that I had experienced in the consulting world and was very practiced at. And so I was very good at teaching other people how to do it as well. And so, yeah, I just wanted to share this. I know this has been kind of like a wild, rambling walk as I sit here on the carpet, and I have pins and needles in my leg now. But I just wanted to share that because I think the same thing can be said for people who have very time-limited businesses as well, in that sometimes we get really frustrated, like, oh, everyone else has like full-time hours and I have to do X, Y, Z, or I don't have the same hours as them because of this. But in my experience of working with people who've started a business with very limited time to give to it, they create really efficient businesses. they don't dilly-dally and waste their time on stuff that's not going to actually get them results. And they don't have a high tolerance for time-wasting strategies or things that are just keeping you busy. They're constantly looking for ways to be more efficient and get the most out of their time in growing their business. And so one of the things that I talk to people who start their business as like a side hustle, or it's on the side of something that's going to end and that eventually they can go full-time in their business, one of the pieces of advice that I give to people who are in that situation is when that extra time becomes available to you, don't give it all to your business. So if you're starting a business on the side of a day job, or you're starting a business on the side of, looking after your kids at home, or there's something that's going to eventually free up in terms of your time. The kids are going to go to school, or you're going to get rid of the day job, or you're going to go to part-time in your job, or whatever it might be. Just because you now have an extra 2 days a week to give to your business doesn't mean that actually giving that extra 2 days a week to your business is an effective or efficient use of your time. And actually, the more that you train your business to run in limited time or on a nice tight budget, the more it actually thrives and the more efficient, either time efficient or money efficient, your business actually is. And so, yeah, I just thought that was such an interesting conversation, because I do feel like sometimes people get caught up in this like, oh, it's so hard because I don't have enough money to pay for all the big things, or it's so hard because I don't have enough time to do all the things that everyone says I should do to grow my business. But in my experience, looking back on my own business startup and also working with people who have had limited time and or limited money to grow their business, we actually do it smarter. We actually do it more efficiently. And that can mean that, for me now, I know I can run my business in under 20 hours a week because I had to when I was unwell in 2021 and 2022. I couldn't do more than 10 hours a week working in my business for almost 8 months. And for another 8 weeks before that, I couldn't even do 5 hours in a week. Half an hour a day was probably all I could handle. And because of that, I had to become very efficient in the time that I gave my business. And I became even more efficient than I was before I went on my sick leave. Before that, I'd got my business down to about 20, 25 hours a week most weeks. But to see my business continue to do quite well, when I was working 9 hours a week on average for all of 2022, my total hours on average was 9 hours a week, 9.5 hours a week. To see that in 2022, my business cash flow was able to recover to, almost as good as before I went away for my surgery. And then in 2023 to continue doing that. And 2023, I got to 17 hours a week in my business. So I haven't even really got back to the hours I was working before. And yet my cash flow and my business income is still rising steadily, still rebuilding really beautifully. And, I think it's going to go from strength to strength. So I have had an experience which has taught me how to run my business lean, which was starting a business with no money. I've had an experience which has taught me how to run my business efficiently and in minimal time, which was having a chronic illness and a surgery that I did not recover from very well. And in both cases, now my present day self knows how to create huge income results without spending a cent, knows how to create huge growth of my income, of my audience, of my leads in my business without working more than 10 to 15 hours a week. That's a really powerful skill to have, and I'm very grateful for it. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I'd love to hear if you've had any experiences like that, or if this has pinged maybe a little aha moment for you as well. Please do drop me a note. You're welcome to DM me on Instagram or Facebook, or send an email through to support@tashcorbin.com. Let me know you've been listening to episode number 399, the first Podcarpet. And I'd love for us to continue this conversation. I might even pop a little pinned post in the heart-centered community. So when this comes out, I'll go and pop a little pinned post up for that. And all of the links to those things will be at tashcorbin.com/399. Thank you so much. And until next time, I cannot wait to see you shine. Bye for now. Would you like more tips, tools, and resources to help you grow your heart-centered business? Head to tashcorbin.com today.